What's up, everyone? I wanted to put together a new structure for some video tutorials, mostly using the Golf Clash Notebook app. So, I want to give you just a little bit of an overview here. The first thing that I want to just kind of talk about is the fact that, these numbers have been updated for a couple months now. We've had these in place for maybe 2.5 months. And, there's been some people that may be struggling with the numbers. Now, it's not the data that is flawed. It's actually very, very good data. A lot of time and effort went into bringing you these numbers. And it is for every club. So it doesn't matter what rough iron you're using, any of these. At any level, they've all been updated, and a lot of work went into finding the values. Now, what you're going to see is a lot of these videos that are going to show you how often something may or may not be uphill. So the most important thing you'll want to be considering is you'll want to always be kind of doing it a systematic approach. You'll want to be looking at the take shot button and taking a look at the camera view. Next, you'll want to pull and stretch out to max club, figure out where the hole is in proximity, and then more importantly, figure out where you intend to land the ball. So once you find that distance, you'll try to emulate that with the slider. Keep it in mind with the slider positioning, if you're pulling a massive difference between where you intend to land and where you're actually going to pull the rings to, you'll want to use that distance that you're pulling the rings to. This will become much more clear once you actually watch these videos, because I always pull to the distance that I'm pulling up to or down to, not where I started. You'll be able to clearly see that, and I'm very descriptive with walking you along the way. Other than that, you'll want to make sure that you're always considering your ball guide. How much ball guide does your club have? You can see mine has 3.9, so I'm missing the fourth bounce and I'm missing all the rollout. So you'll want to kind of get into kind of a systematic way that you do it. What I'll typically do is maybe on tailwinds, maybe 1 or 2 backspin, for example. And into the headwind, I might not use any backspin and just let it kind of roll out. However, it does get easier once you get closer to a Nirvana 8 and have that 4.5 ball guide. That's going to make things worlds better for you. You'll just be able to use the ball guide to kind of figure out distance, how far the shot's going to roll out. Keep it in mind, you'll still have to play wind effect. How much wind effect do you have to play? That's determined by how strong the wind is. Think of it this way. If I have a 10 mile per hour wind and I'm at max club, that wind is going to go so many, green grids over. Maybe if I was to just estimate and tell you what I would think, 10 miles per hour would offset at max club, I would probably say in the neighborhood of maybe 3 green grids. That means that, let's say the wind was 5. That means I still need to offset very, very close to maybe 1.5. It's going to be essentially kind of half. Similarly, you need to use that same kind of logic when we're talking about max versus min. Min is traditionally defined as quarter club for these clubs. So if I was to input, let's just talk about 10 wind right here real quick. You'll see that max in here is it's giving me 5.9 rings. And you'll see mid club is half of that adjustment. Min club is going to be a quarter of that adjustment. Once I start touching this slider positioning, keep in mind that I can pull this club all the way down to my foot. Okay, I still use a rough iron even at 0% shot. So as soon as I touch this slider, you'll see that min becomes 0. That's because new min is 0 now. So that's the reason that you're seeing this happen. Because I can pull all the way down to my feet, and I need to be considering those adjustments at, say, 6% shot. I need to make sure that I can only go that many rings. If you ever want to restore that value, you can just go ahead and hit the reset button on the slider, and you'll see that I can restore that min value. Keep in mind that min only corresponds to quarter club. But you need to be thinking about this, that, mid club means half the ring adjustment. Min club means quarter of the ring. Similarly with wind effect, secondary wind effect. The same thing, correlation can be said about the 10 mile per hour wind, how I said maybe I'll offset somewhere in the proximity of maybe 3 green grids, and a 5 wind, I'll do maybe a green grid and a half. The same logic applies to mid versus max. So let's say I was at max club and I used that 3 grids and on a 10 mile per hour wind. At mid club, if I'm at 50% distance, I'm going to need to kind of maybe do that green grid and a half because it's only half the time in the air. So I'm going to essentially do half the ball guide offset. Similarly, it would work the same with min club. If I'm down here towards quarter club, for instance, I'll only go a quarter of that offset, ball guide offset for secondary wind effects. So if I was going to go 3 green grids, maybe I'll only go 0.75 green grids as my starting offset around the min club slider. This will be much easier to understand once you actually see some of the shots. So I've put together a library of shots for you guys to look through. So, do check them out. Take a look at my methodology for setting up the shots. Make sure that you're doing kind of the same similar structure with yours, and always be thinking about things like that secondary wind effect. Good luck out there, guys. And let me know what you guys think. Thanks. Okay, so the first thing that you'll want to do here is take a look at the Take Shot button view to see the elevation. You can see that it's uphill, so I'll want to use an elevation. You'll see oftentimes that these are uphill. Other than that, you'll just want to kind of zoom out, figure out kind of where your landing spot's going to be. I expect this to kind of be right around maybe 90% slider or so. So 6-ish rings. And what we'll try to do, I'm going to try to land a little bit more on the flat spot, and we'll still need to play wind effects. So you can see that I'm kind of offsetting the guide and right around 6-ish rings. And it looks like I'm just a bit off on my timing, so it is going to shoot out towards the left. But you can see the general idea. I hit about a 2-ring great ball there. When you consider the wind effect, that's the most important element. You can't just point at the hole and go 6 rings. You still need to be thinking about wind effect for those shots. But you can see that if I can just do a little bit better with my speeding up, if I'm not doing this while talking, I can obviously do this just a little bit faster. But that's more or less the technique you'll want to be using. All right, let's take a look at this one. First thing we'll do is take a look at the Take Shot view. You can see, once again, uphill. This is going to be a common theme for rough shots, so don't assume that the notebook numbers are wrong. Next thing that you're going to do is you're going to just kind of scan for the distance. I'll probably want to land around here. Note that this is maybe about 80% club, but we're going to be pulling back. Anytime we pull back, we're probably going to use 70% club, so we need to change our adjustment. Other than that, we still need to play wind effect. So you'll see that I'm kind of leaving the ball guide short and maybe just a little bit off, and 5.6-ish on the rings. Way early on my timing, but let's just see how this rolls out. And you can see very good speed. Had I not had a 2-ring great ball, it's going right for the hole. Make sure that you're playing wind effect. Make sure that you're, figuring that distance slider out. As I need to pull back or extend towards max, make sure that you're using the adjustment that you pull to, not where you start. All right, let's take a look at this one. First thing that you'll want to do is view the Take Shot view. And you can see minus 10%. It's probably a bit uphill. 8.5, side wind. You can see 5 rings at max. It's only if I hold at max. So keep in mind that if I don't pull back, I'm going to probably land somewhere up in there, maybe about 5 rings. That looks pretty good. We're just going to basically, you know, shoot beyond max in this situation to get the ball up there much more towards the green. And you can see I did catch a great ball, so it's going to shoot off towards the right. But it was also hard to be precise on that one because of the fact that you can't start beyond max and pull back. So you just kind of had to visualize, you know, where it was going to land. But the ring adjustment gives you about, you know, 5 to 5.5-ish rings down. Other than that, just factor in wind effect. All right, let's take a look at this one. First thing that we're going to do is take a look at the take shot view. It looks like it goes kind of uphill, but then this should fall a little bit back downhill. I'm not going to use elevation on this one. Next thing that you'll see that I'll do is try to figure out a land spot. So that's maybe 50% club. I may be pulling back slightly, maybe to about 40%. So I'll probably try to use a slider positioning close to, you know, 40, 50%. Somewhere 40, 45. And other than that, we'll just try to play wind effect. So 3-ish rings here. Missed our perfect ball, but let's see how the speed looks like with the rollout there. You can see, you know, with perfect ball, it, you know, has a very, very good chance of going in. You just want to kind of stick to those adjustments and keep doing it like that, making sure that you're always, you know, considering the wind effect and also using the slider position that you pull the rings to, not where you start from. All right, let's take a look at this hole right here. First thing that we'll do, same process. We'll take a look at the take shot view button. You can see again, once again, uphill. May want to underadjust. I can't really tell. It's between 5 and 10%. Other than that, you'll try to figure out the land zone. It looks like I'm going to land right about here. So maybe 75, 80-ish% slider, somewhere in there. And a little bit of an angled wind. So right around 3 rings here. Other than that, we're going to make sure that we play wind effect. So you see that I'm going to offset the guide slightly. And we're going to come over here, do the 3 rings here. Perfect ball. And let's see if we can get this hill to play right. It looks like I might have just overcorrected just slightly. But you can see, you know, I have the general gist of what I'm trying to do. Anytime you try to land on a side hill like that, it's going to be very, very tough to make sure that you actually, you know, get that exact bounce that you're looking for. It's going to be a much, much tougher shot when you have to do that. So you could run into problems. When you try to land on side hills, you always want to try to pick those flat spots. However, it was kind of out of the question for this one. All right, let's take a look at this one. This is going to be a little bit more challenging here with, you know, the first thing you might want to do, take a look at take shot. You can see, once again, uphill, pretty much common theme. You'll see a lot. I didn't realize this until I was, you know, building this tool and retweaking the numbers, how often this actually happens. But it's a very common thing. And another thing that you'll see is I'm going to be pulling down towards lower ground, so I'm actually going to under adjust my rings. So I probably only went maybe about 2.8 there, even though it calls for 3.3. It's because it's going to land short. You can see, had I got my perfect ball, you know, it had a chance to be going towards the pin. But keep in mind, anytime you pull down to lower ground like that, it's going to change the trajectory. It's going to come in lower. And because that happens, there's not as much wind effect. The ball never gets up back as high. So you can see I under adjusted probably about half a ring there. And if you don't do that, you're probably going to over pull every time. So definitely something to keep in mind. All right, let's check this one out, see what it looks like. First, I'll try to, you know, take a look at the take shot view. This is a tricky one because it looks like it goes uphill, but then it's going to fall back down. Let's think about where we're kind of landing on the fairway here. This is very close to, maybe flat, to be honest with you. Now we are going to be up towards max. You can see how close. So I'm thinking maybe somewhere around here. And other than that, I'm just going to place some ball guide offset, kind of like this. And 3.3 rings. Let's just go. There's like the 0.3. There's 3. Perfect ball. And let's just see how this comes in. Looks pretty good. Just off. So maybe just a tad bit much on the offset. But you can see it's in the very vicinity. Very, very close. It'll see if you can master that wind effect play. You'll be all over these things and be able to, really execute some shots. Just pay attention to those elevations. Some of them, especially like that one, are very, very tricky. There's a chance that I'm 5% off on the elevation. It's really, really tough to tell. But don't think about where the green is necessarily. You need to be thinking about where you're planning to land and where you are. It might have been a minus 5% in that case. Is it uphill? Is it flat? It's very, very tough to tell, but you can see, it's going to be relatively marginal either way. All right, here's another rough shot let's take a look at. Remember the order of the way to kind of do things here. First thing, look at the take shot view. You'll see, once again, uphill. This is a very, very common theme. You'll see that I'm also going to be landing somewhere up in here and pulling up towards max. So we'll want to kind of over pull. I may go to maybe 85% club, give or take. Other than that, I may try to land on the fairway here with some side spin. Keep in mind that I'll need to play secondary wind effect, so you'll see that I'm kind of keeping it through the hole a little bit. And right around 6-ish rings here. Perfect ball. And let's see if it lands on the fairway. Looks like it does. So you can see that the aim is very, very good. In fact, you can see that wind play, everything. The secondary wind effect, make sure that you're considering things like secondary wind effect, because you'll see that, especially with these rough iron and sand shots, you'll see that the trajectory of the ball guide, it's kind of high, and the ball guide changes dramatically. So make sure that you're factoring that in on these shots. All right, let's take a look here at this one. You can see we kind of have a, same approach here. We're going to take a look at the first one. It's kind of a diagonal wind. You can see once again uphill. Very, very common theme. You're going to see so many holes are uphill. So that's going to be one of the biggest mistakes that you make. Now I'm going to cut this in half and probably try to land somewhere in here. That's probably about 40% club or so. That's what it looks like. So somewhere down here, maybe 2.5 rings. Other than that, ball guide offset for wind effect. So you can see with about how much I'm playing in that situation. 2.2 rings. Other than that, a lot of these are going to come down to perfect ball timing and also, playing the right amount of ball guide offset. It's very, very challenging to get that in there tight. Also, using the distance slider, 40% versus 38% can sometimes lead to 0.1 difference. And you can see, especially when you're using less clubs and accuracy is a little bit lower, you'll see that these subtle differences can be the difference to be why you're, potentially missing by just fractions of an inches. Not to mention, having to need to factor in wind effect as well. All right, guys, let's take a look at this one. You can see straight headwind. Make sure you're looking at the take shot view. You'll see this is one of the few shots that actually is not uphill. It might even be downhill. It's very, very close. If you want to take another look at this, it could be even 5% downhill. It's very, very tough to tell. Keep in mind that I will be pulling up towards max, so I'll want to make sure that I'm using that slider positioning. So I'm thinking somewhere around here, and I'll probably try to tweak my ball guide, make sure that I'm kind of keeping it kind of up through the hole a little bit. 7.7 rings, somewhere up in here. So a bit early on the timing. This is going to shoot right. But let's see what it looks like speed-wise. It looks pretty good. Did it come up short? Just barely, maybe short. So again, you know, with this adjustment, I used -5. So that's probably partially why. I was trying to mention that it would be, you know, so there's 8.1. That would have been probably pretty close. Additionally, as I was mentioning, it might have even been 5% downhill. So one of the very few holes where you actually saw a downhill approach. Wanted to throw that in there for you guys. Keep that in mind to be looking at that take shot button. It's going to be, you know, the number one useful tool for you for figuring out the correct ring values for the notebook number. As you'll see, a lot of these are uphill. Take a look at this shot right here. You can see tailwind. First thing that I'll do is just kind of size it up, figure out where I am. It's probably about 70 club, but 70%, but I'll be pulling back. Next, I'll look at the elevation here just to make sure. And you can see once again, we are uphill. So again, as I mentioned, maybe 70 pulling back into the 60s somewhere. So I'm going to make sure that I'm factoring that in. Other than that, you can see I can't, you know, I want to stay away from this edge if I can. So I'm probably going to need to do some curl. You can see with what I'm doing, the ball guide's kind of tweaked off towards the side. 3.2, we're going to pretty much just try to utilize all this curl here. This will allow us to stay away from the edge in case we hit this great ball. Here you can see I great ball it to the left. I'm going to miss to the left just barely, but you can see that I'm trying to factor in, make sure that I stay away from that edge so it doesn't clip the rough. But you can also see that the rollout is very spot on. And if I'm thinking about things like wind effect using the elevation, you're going to see that these notebook numbers are very, very good. All right, let's take a look at this rough shot right here. First thing I'm going to do is just figure out, you know, where I'm going to be. I'm thinking somewhere around maybe 80% club pulling up. Next, I'm going to look at the take shot view. Now, this is very, very close to being flat. It might be 5% uphill. Relatively negligible, especially into a headwind like this. Other thing that you can do is you could just kind of, you know, underpull the slider as well. But I do believe I'm going to be somewhere maybe around 80% here, club. And other than that, we're just going to play wind effect. You can see that I'm just maybe slightly putting this offset and hopefully making sure that I keep it through the hole. I'm going to pull up to here. And looks like I wasn't able to get the perfect ball. Very, very close. But you'll see, you know, it kind of runs out exactly kind of how I was showing the ball guide, making sure that I wasn't, you know, going to wind up short. So I wanted to make sure that I kept enough ball guide long enough and not put too much backspin on that either, especially into the headwinds. You'll want to be thinking about things like, you know, the wind effect, not to mention, you know, making sure that, you know, you keep that ball guide. You know, if it's a tailwind, make sure that, you know, it's going to kind of stretch out. If it's a headwind, it's going to kind of compress a little bit. So you want to make sure that, especially when you don't have that 4.5 ball guide, you do want to be a little bit more careful. So you can see I don't have a 4.5 ball guide. So that's another thing you want to be factoring in.